In the huge, invisible world of bacteria, sometimes the biggest clues aren't some complex secret. They're hiding in plain sight. It's not always about what these microbes do, but about their very shape. And sometimes that shape is the first warning sign of a major threat. So let me ask you a question that sounds a bit like a riddle. On one hand, you have a devastating disease that can sweep across entire continents. And on the other, a nagging stomach ulcer that you or someone you know might have. What in the world could possibly connect those two things? Well, the answer is this. It's a shape, a simple, elegant curve. And believe it or not, this tiny microscopic form is the calling card, the signature of some of the most notorious bacteria known to humanity. So today, we are diving deep into a very specific group of troublemakers, gram-negative curved bacteria. Now, gram-negative is just a scientific way of saying they have this unique, extra tough outer layer that makes them particularly hard to kill. And this little family of bacteria, oh man, they're responsible for diseases that have literally shaped our history and are still a huge challenge today. I want you to think of this as a kind of medical detective story. We're going to follow the clues, we're going to identify the suspects, and we're going to uncover how these tiny little curved organisms can cause such massive, massive problems. All right, let's get right to it. Case file number 1, the floodgates. Yeah, that title alone tells you this is going to be something serious. And the story here, it starts with the patient's own words, which paint a pretty terrifying picture. Just try to wrap your head around that. Floodgates opening. This is not just feeling sick. We are talking about a level of fluid loss so extreme and so sudden, it feels like a dam has just burst inside you. And that right there, that is the central clue in our first mystery. Okay, let's look at the facts. Our patient is a 34-year-old construction worker. He was perfectly healthy just a few days ago, but now his vitals are critical. Severe dehydration, a weak pulse, his blood pressure is crashing. And all of this came on just 2 days after he got back from a trip to Kenya. The investigation has to move fast. What on earth could act this quickly? And here's our first culprit, Vibrio cholera. You can see the main toxic strains listed here. They're called serogroups, which is really just a way of saying different versions of the same bug. And these two in particular, O1 and O139, they're the ones that cause cholera, an intestinal infection that can turn deadly with shocking speed. Now, this map really puts our one single case into a global perspective. Cholera is not some disease you just read about in history books. It is a very real modern threat. And these highlighted zones show that outbreaks often follow things like natural disasters or conflicts, anytime that access to clean, safe water is disrupted. So how does it actually cause those floodgates to open? Well, this diagram shows the mechanism perfectly. The bacterium pumps out this incredibly potent toxin, and this toxin literally hijacks your own intestinal cells, turning them into tiny pumps that just start spewing out massive amounts of water and electrolytes. And this is a really specific but important detail. Look at this table. You see, while a lot of Vibrio bacteria live in salt water and are linked to things like seafood, the specific strains that cause these huge cholera epidemics, they thrive in fresh water. And that distinction is absolutely critical for understanding how the disease can spread like wildfire through contaminated drinking water. And with that, we can stamp this case closed. The treatment isn't some complex antibiotic, it's just about replacing the fluids and electrolytes the body is losing, and fast. And prevention is even more basic. Clean water and proper sanitation. It's a remarkably simple solution to a truly devastating disease. All right, on to our second case file. This time, the threat isn't lurking in the water supply. It might be a lot closer to home, maybe even in your own kitchen. So, meet our second suspect, Campylobacter jejuni. It's what we call a zoonotic bacterium, which just means it jumps from animals to humans. It actually lives completely harmlessly in the guts of animals like chickens, cows, and pigs. In them, it's no big deal. In us, well, that is a very different story. So how does it make that jump? Well, the number one way, by a long shot, is eating undercooked poultry. But it's also about sneaky cross-contamination. Using the same cutting board for raw chicken and then for your salad. It's a powerful reminder of just how critical food safety really is. But here's the really scary part. The danger from this infection doesn't always end when the diarrhea stops. As you can see here, for some unlucky people, it can trigger long-term irritable bowel syndrome. And in rare, really severe cases, it can lead to something called Guillain-Barré syndrome, a terrifying condition where your own immune system starts attacking your nerves. Okay, let's open our third and final case file. Now, this culprit is a different beast altogether. It doesn't cause a sudden, violent illness. Instead, this one plays the long game. It's a master of stealth, hiding inside us for years. It usually starts with something like this. A really common complaint, right? A burning pain in your stomach. Something most of us would just dismiss as heartburn, maybe from stress or eating spicy food. So, here are the facts. A 55-year-old teacher with a burning stomach. But the real clue, the smoking gun, is on that prescription. Why would a doctor prescribe 2 different antibiotics along with an antacid? You wouldn't do that for simple gastritis. You do it because you suspect the cause is not simple at all. And here is our final suspect, Helicobacter pylori. This thing is amazing. It has a survival superpower. The stomach is basically a vat of acid, a place that should kill most bacteria instantly. But H. pylori produces an enzyme called urese, which creates a little protective bubble of neutralized acid around it. That shield allows it to burrow in and colonize the stomach lining. And here is the absolute kicker. How common is this little stomach stowaway? Well, it's estimated that it infects about half of the entire world's population. 50%. Now, for most of those people, they'll never have any symptoms. But for a significant minority, it's a ticking time bomb. Because a long-term chronic infection with H. pylori is not benign. It is a major cause of peptic ulcers. And even more frightening, it's a recognized carcinogen. It significantly increases a person's risk of developing stomach cancer. So finding and getting rid of this bacterium can be, quite literally, life-saving. So let's just take a step back and look at the big picture. From the sudden, explosive crisis of cholera to the quiet, hidden threat of H. pylori, we've seen how 3 incredibly different diseases are all caused by bacteria that share one thing, a common shape. We've cracked 3 cases today, all linked by that simple curve. But it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Our bodies and our world are absolutely teeming with trillions of other microbes. What other mysteries are out there, just waiting to be revealed?